All right, welcome to the Collector Car Podcast. I'm extremely excited to have this subject. It's very personal to me. You'll find out here shortly. But first, I want to welcome the two guests I have on today, Dave Sawyer and Shannon Wofford. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. This is
awesome.
a nice place.
This is great.
I'm not the expert on vectors. I kind of grew up with these a little bit. We'll get into it here in a second because I have pictures. But, briefly, tell us a little bit about how you're involved in the vector world. So, yeah, let's start with Dave.
Well, started in the vector world when I seen them in 1978 and fell in love and was a fan ever since and bought my first vector back in 2000.
Yeah, so I'll throw a picture up here, but you've got the yellow Vector, the M12, and you're based out of Cincinnati, where I currently live, and I was able to see this car, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. It's been a while now, and so it's great to have Vectors on the field here at the Las Vegas Concours Elegance. They had honoring the 50th anniversary, so it's been a treat to see these incredible cars. So Shannon, tell us a little bit about how you're involved, because I know you're very, very, very involved in the vector world.
Kind of a busy guy. So, I didn't fall in love with Vector until 1981, but when I was a kid and I saw the W2 at a car show in San Diego, and then yada yada yada. 40 years later, I'm towing the W2 across LA, so that was pretty surreal. But I started doing a Vector documentary about the 50-year history of Vector about 5 years ago. Started on this film and spent the last 2 years trying to get as many Vectors out here for the Concours, because I'm buddies with Stuart Sobek that put the Concours together. So he offered to host the Vector reunion, and
rest is history, right?
Like a dummy, I offered to try and get everybody together and do the work. So
yeah, for sure.
But it was great. So it's a car show within a car show, but everybody seemed to like it. So doing the film about Vector and just working with all the guys and trying to network, and since Jerry Weigert passed away last year, just trying and network everybody and bring everybody together, so Vector doesn't revolve around one person. If something happens or somebody disappears or whatever, stories behind that, but so people can contact each other and help each other out.
Yeah. So what's cool about having you two on the podcast is that you're basically first gen expert and you're second gen. Would you agree? Hopefully you agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
C1 and C2.
So I'd like for Shannon to kind of give us an overview of what the first gen, the W8, was all about. Obviously they're wicked, crazy looking cars.
Well, the first generation, Vector came out starting with there's just so much, to talk about. But the embryo, of course, is the rubber doorstop from the '60s. Started the wedge,
right,
car shape, and Jerry Weigert came up with the W1, which he ended up calling it the W1, the first Vector that he built the mock-up with Lee Brown from L.A. And they did the first mock-up, came out the L.A. Auto Expo in 1972. So that's what we're celebrating, is the 50 years since that debut of the Vector.
Yep.
And then after a couple of years, they kind of went their separate ways. And then Jerry came out with starting the W2 in 76, 78. They kind of got it to start running. And then about 1980 is kind of the beginning of the iconic W2 Vector of the whole 80s promotion that was on every magazine on the planet, car magazine.
So they ended up making 22, is that correct, of the W8s?
Yeah, so depending on how you count them, there's always a debate, because there's two, and I can never remember the numbers because names and numbers don't stick, but there's 18 production cars, the W2 prototype, there's PP1, which is production prototype 1, and PP2, which is production prototype 2. I know the guys that own those. Then there's 18 actual production cars, but there's 2 chassis numbers or whatever that don't exist, and then there's 2 chassis numbers that there's doubles of, and then there's the 2 Avtex, and then they started the M12 line with Megatech.
Right.
So depending on how you count it,
Yeah, it depends on how you count it.
Could be 18, could be 22. It's
right,
22
right.
and a half.
Okay. And now, what was the story back in the day with Andre Agassi's W8? Like, what was that all about?
So that was part of doing the research and everything in the documentary. It's kind of I tell people it's like trying to investigate a crash at an intersection. And so everybody's got their stories, but you got to talk to people on all 4 corners to put the whole story together, see what happened. That's what I've been doing the last 5 years. So, Dave's got his expertise. David Koska, who was the head engineer that did a lot more stuff that deserves a lot more credit than he ever got from Jerry. I mean, he's part of the triangle that made Vector happen was David Koska. And he worked for 10 years developing the W2 and before he even got paid, you know.
Right.
And so doing the research on everything, I hear the different stories, so I've been able to put all the pieces together. So David Koska told me the true story from him about Agassi. So Agassi is 21. There's a reason why Lamborghini and those guys don't sell new Lamborghinis to 20-year-old actors or rock stars or whatever, right? Jerry would sell a car to anybody.
Right. Well, you had to. You're starting a business.
And Agassi is a local boy here, you know, Las Vegas. So he's having his 21st birthday party. He pays $455,000, writes a check for his W8, right?
That's back in what year was that? 81?
That was 90. I can't remember the year. No, well, it was actually like around 93, 92, 93.
For a W8?
Yeah. So the production,
Okay.
they got funded in November 88. They spent 1989 finishing the PP1, PP2 cars. And then in 1990, they started like actual production on the W8 series. So it was 91 to 93 for the W8 series. Agassi, and they all sold for different prices. I mean, it was Jerry Weigert world, Planet Jerry, we call it. So Agassi orders this car, writes the check for $455K, and they're finishing it up and everything. It's not 100% done, you know, and that's out in California, right? Which, you know, they don't rush. You know, California's not New York. They're not in a hurry out there, you know. So he wants the car at his birthday party when he turns 21 here in Vegas. What could possibly go wrong, right?
Right.
So you got a 21-year-old kid with lots of money. He's got this new toy. It's his birthday party. You got Jerry Weigert and the Vector, and they're trying to get it together and everything else. They tell him, look, it runs. We can, you know, if you really have to have it, we'll take it out to your place, but don't drive it because it's not finished. They take it out, bring it out to Vegas. He's got all his buddies there and everything else. And, you know, the rumor, which there's a lot of in Vector, the rumor is, you know, he drove it, caught on fire, whatever. And then that was the end of Vector. That's what killed Vector. Well, from different people I've talked to, including Dave Koska, the head engineer, he told me that what happened was he just took it up and he did like some speed runs up and down the street with his buddies, you know, showing off. And he backed it in the garage, like when it's still hot. And then, of course, where the exhaust is in the back, the trunk is right above it. And what happened was the heat from the exhaust had like kind of melted the carpet.
Right.
So it's kind of, you know, didn't really smell. It's just like a bad smell, melting carpet, whatever. I've done that trying to form carpet, building cars, and you put like a heat lamp trying to form the carpet, you know, on the humps and stuff, that kind of thing. So he's a little bit embarrassed, but not a big deal. Didn't catch on fire. It wasn't, you know, didn't smoke out the garage or whatever. And it was David Koska said, hey, it wasn't a big deal at the time, whatever. He did his party, whatever. We went out, we got the car, we brought it back, we finished it up. But he ended up not getting the car. And that's a pretty good size refund, right?
Right, yeah.
And he said it wasn't until like a year later, the story got out in some car magazine. Oh, I guess his car caught on fire, blah, blah, blah. And
Word of mouth.
you know,
Right,
and then,
right.
you know, so it's kind of like doing the James Dean documentary I'm also working on. It's doing the research and trying to separate fact from fiction and wheat from the chaff has been difficult, but it's interesting. But all the true stories, because normally when you do research online, especially these days, is everybody likes to just cut and paste, you know, copy and paste, you know, to get clicks and blah,
Sure,
blah, blah.
right.
But talking to enough people and traveling and everything else, and you get all the different pieces of the puzzle, the true stories are so much more interesting than the stuff they make up online.
Right. I bet.
And it's all unbelievable. I mean, the saying is true. You can't make this stuff up. So.
Well, it's funny because, I mean, they're both gorgeous cars. They're so different, the two of them. I mean, just almost night and day between the first gen and second gen. Walk us through the ending, I guess, of W8 and then into the rebirth under new ownership and everything else.
The Megatech years.
Right, for the M12. So
how much time did you get?
Well, let's try to keep it at 5
abridged
minutes.
version. Yeah, the abridged version.
So
you got the
just kind of walk
Cliff
us through
Notes
it.
version,
Well,
or you want
the tail end of the W8, and the company went through some transformations from California to Florida.
Right, that's a
the
big
Cliff
transformation.
Notes, that's the Cliff Notes version, yeah.
That's the definite Cliff Notes version. There's so many fun things to say.
Well, so for the W8, was it really the Agassi thing, or was there other stuff occurring that caused it to shut down after?
Well, it's kind of like what sank the Titanic. I mean, it's not
An
just
iceberg.
one thing. It's just a lot of things. Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So it's a combination of things. and they call it the hostile takeover from Megatech, which is an Indonesian company, and I go into it more in depth on my film, but basically Megatech from Indonesia, and if you look up the Suharto, Tommy Suharto, and that whole clan over there, and like I said, there is drug cartels and murders and
Crazy stuff.
weird stuff, right?
Right.
But Megatech bought Lamborghini about the same time they bought Vector, so they work with some of the board members, whatever. They take possession of Vector, kick Jerry out. It's really similar to like Steve Jobs at Apple.
Right.
Let's take away the guy who created it and the creative genius and run the company ourselves. It's a
Right.
balance. Okay,
Right.
you're not a business person, but you got to make it work. So Megatex buys a company, and since they had bought Lamborghini, which Lamborghini North America was in Florida, they're like, oh, we'll just move everything from California out to Florida. Of course, they didn't like that. That's when, they had like 3 cars left they were finishing, and ends up with David Koska, Jerry Weigert at the shop with the locks on the gates and everything else, and security keeping everything
Right.
out. And that's
Another famous story.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So that all happened. So finally, Megatech gets all their stuff, go to Florida. Of course, they took Jerry's personal equipment and a bunch of other stuff in his car, blah, blah, blah. But everything moved to Florida. So at first, they kind of shared the Lamborghini dealership in the area with Vector, and then they kind of separated buildings and stuff. And so Jerry had already brought out the Avtex, which were a little bit stretched, more streamlined version, whatever, of the W8. And they just kind of modified that. And they're like, hey, we own Lamborghini. Why don't we just put some Lamborghini?
So how many of the Avtex were built? I'm not familiar with
It was
those
just
cars.
the 2 Avtex.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
You mentioned that earlier.
That's the turquoise and the purple. So
Yep.
they've got it. I wouldn't say convertible, like a Spider version.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
We actually sold that, I think, 2 years ago.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
A guy in Florida that's a big car collector was really big on Instagram. He bought it, paid like $1 million, whatever, for the 2 cars and
You
stuff.
bought both, right?
Yeah, he bought both of them. In fact, he was going to be here at the reunion, and that's a whole nother story.
Sure. Okay, so all right, they made those 2 cars, and then walk us through what happened after that.
So those were the updated cars that Jerry had. So then once they finally got Jerry to let go of the building and everything else, and they collect up all the molds and frames and all the other stuff, moved the whole operation to Florida and Jacksonville. Then they designed this M12, and so it's a little bit stretched. The back part of it's a little bit stretched because the W8 was based on it's the design as a Chevy V8 block, but it's all I want to say Brodex, but I can never remember the names. But it's an
It was a Rodeck 350.
Rodeck, yeah. So it's all high performance aftermarket basic V8 Chevy design, twin turbo and everything else.
Right.
So, but that sat sideways from like the original W1 idea that they had in 1972 about taking like a V8 front wheel drive, an automatic like an Oldsmobile or the Cadillacs,
Yep.
and then just flipping it over to the back, and so you'd have to wait in the back and the mid-engine design, whatever. And so, but instead of the engine being sideways in the back or transverse in the back, they've got the Lamborghini V12 longitudinal, lengthwise, which when you take a 12-cylinder and turn it the opposite way, they stretch out the back part. That's what,
right.
The first real M12 that I've seen in person was Dave's. I'd seen pictures and in videos and everything, and I got to tell you, I didn't tell you this, but your car is so beautiful in person. I was like, man, it's like when you see somebody and you're like, I bet that person's a jerk, or he's a jerk, or she's a jerk, or whatever. And then you meet him, and you're like, that guy was so cool. That's the way.
Real jerk.
Yeah. Because the takeover, like I say, they call it a hostile takeover, the way it went down. But if you don't sell more than 50% of your company, they can't take it over.
Right,
But if you'd
right.
rather have the millions of dollars instead of control of your own company,
So what point was Jerry totally out?
he was out.
Well, Jerry was out back in about 93, 94
Yeah.
when everything was going down, and everything got switched over to Florida. Once it went down to Florida, he kind of went off on wet bike or jet bike.
Jet bike. Yeah.
Jet bike, which is, someone who's a genius and comes out with great things, or they could pencil it down. It doesn't mean that they can come out with great performance, or they're a great business person or a great leader, because most businesses without the leadership of taking care of your team, it's just failure. So
Right.
It's got to be sustainable.
Right.
I mean,
Definitely.
great ideas are great, but you still got to pay people and pay rent and everything else.
all the overhead.
I've heard that, I mean, Jerry's a great artist and everything that he does and everything, and designer and everything and whatnot, but his business training, his business skills, I've heard that Jerry went to a seminar somewhere, and his extent of business training was somebody told him, first rule of business is never use your own money. And he's like, okay, that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
And that kind of explains the rest of any questions you have about Jerry and business.
I didn't follow that book.
Yeah.
I wish
He's a lot better businessman.
I don't know about that.
Well,
Gary's in a much better place. We'll say that right now, and he was a very interesting individual.
Yeah, everybody liked Jerry. I mean, it's he's just a likable guy, and he's always most of the time mellow and everything else, and like I said, he's a smart guy and everything.
So that was the first time that Jerry was involved with Vector, and then he was out of it. He got back into Vector, I would say, around 2002.
Oh, okay.
There was that pause, and when Mototech owned it, and they lost $44 million. You said you had some brochures and stuff about that. Yeah, they learned how to spend a little bit of money as well. They lost a little over $44 million, spent a little over $1 million per car, built 17 of them, which really wasn't parts from old ones. Anything.
I thought it was 14. You're saying it's 17?
Total cars when you're taking the PP ones. Once again,
Oh,
the production car, the pre-production cars, the crash test cars, the race cars.
It's giving me a headache.
Parts put
Okay.
back together, and then
And this is just the introduction to 50 years of Vegas.
I
So you
know.
can see what I've been going through the last few years, trying to figure this
wait
stuff
until
out.
you see the next 50 years. It's
Oh
gonna
my
be
gosh.
Yeah.
Well, so before we move on to the M12, I do want to give a little shout out to one of the cars, the two W8s that were here. So we had the silver
Oh,
car from the
gorgeous.
Peterson.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
So
incredible
you were
car.
there all day. I was
Top shelf.
I was judging Corvettes, but you got to be there all day. So what was the feedback on the Vectors in general?
In general, it was
Because there was a lot of people.
there was so many people that came to the concourse just for the Vectors, and I was
It was
shocked.
very cultish almost. Like I was like, wow, these guys are
There's
not
a lot of-
leaving
that
these
is the
guys
best-
alone.
that
There
Right?
was
is
a
the
lot of
best
Vector
way of-
shirts. There
Yeah.
was a lot. We had more owners here than the actual cars. So there's actually current and former Vector owners here, plus ex-employees, plus the fans.
Oh my
that-
God.
From Alabama.
Well, I got to give a shout out to Angus Mitchell because I talked to him yesterday.
Oh my
Hey,
God.
he said, give my dad a shout out. So if those of you who don't know, Paul Mitchell of, famous hair care product line bought one of these cars, the black one, or his brother bought it new.
John Paul DeJoria is the owner, and he was partners with, and I can never remember Mitchell's first name. What Angus's dad's name?
Paul.
Paul.
Huh?
On
Paul
the
Mitchell.
signs,
Paul Mitchell?
Yeah.
Yep. So he was.
Well, you can excuse him because of the,
Oh,
doesn't use the hair
oh.
products as much as some of
Ouch.
us others with
I'm
hair.
not that familiar either.
Paul
I love
Mitchell, is, from what I understand, is a mixture of John Paul DeJoria and his business partner.
I
Mitchell.
don't know the
And Angus Mitchell is his business partner's son.
Gotcha.
John
I
Paul
don't know
DeJoria has a
their
daughter
company
who
version,
is-
but I'll tell you, the people are the greatest. They were.
Oh, Angus
phenomenal.
is awesome. I mean, he's
Oh,
so
yeah.
cool.
God,
I mean,
very graceful.
these guys just
Yeah, it's
ooze-
incredible.
They just ooze cool.
You would never know that he was the owner of the car because he was just so giving and sharing.
Yeah.
And just,
Well, he was geeking
Yeah.
out more than anybody about cars in general, which is
Angus-
super cool. So I do want to move to the M12. So
Okay.
I do have some pictures I want to put up here. And this is, it almost feels like a little trivia game here. I don't know. I'm going to throw some pictures up here, see who can talk about what. So if you look at the screen over here, we've got, let's see, this is the,
That looks like a brochure photo.
yeah, it's 1995 annual report.
Yes.
Now, you mentioned Jerry was involved in 2002. I'm like, there weren't any Vectors in 2002. So what was he doing
Well,
at
what
that time?
happened? Well, do you want to tell him? Because Jerry did a lawsuit and got most of his stuff back.
Okay. Okay.
Got most of his stuff back. We're still going through some internal things. May 21st of 2001, a company called American Automotive Corporation bought the names and marks of the M12, the logo, Vector Automotive, and all of that. But the attorney's background wasn't the best. There was, I think, 7 attorneys at the time, and the trademark attorney wasn't a sharpshooter, quick shooter,
Right.
didn't
right.
shoot from the hip like Jerry's attorney up in Chicago. And
Okay.
the trademark instantly was an outdated
Sure.
thing, and
Yep.
oops, you don't have the name anymore. But he really didn't push the issue because he knew that there was problems there. That
Yeah.
I talked to him in Indianapolis at the PRI show, and it was quite interesting. He was always kind to me.
Yep.
Walked on glass,
Yeah.
and but we just kind of kept it at that.
Okay. Well, let's move on to these cool pictures
Yes.
here. So I got a lot to flip through here for you guys. So
The pre-production car, that was actually one of the first cars built, and it was the built for the ads and everything else. That wound up being number 13.
Oh,
They
really?
repainted
Is that the
that
one that
one
was on the original brochure?
black. Yes.
okay,
Yeah,
so
what color? Because it's a nice, it's a really different
beautiful.
color. You know what they call that color? I mean, it's just
Gold.
I always say
Yeah.
gold. I don't know. So for my listeners who might be listening audio only, I've probably just lost you all. But go to the YouTube channel and watch this. So there's some really cool period pictures we have going on here, including pictures I took, horrendous pictures I took at the factory back in like 1996, 5. We'll get to those in a second. So I'm just going to flip through here. This is the message from the president in this brochure. I called out something on the left here. The projected goal was 17 cars per month. Now, do you think that was ever truly feasible?
It could be feasible
well,
if stuff was
This was just, hey, you know what? We need more money. We're going to do it. Here's what we're going to do.
a
So,
lot of expenses. As a matter of fact, the photo that you're seeing there, we'll have to double check with the one of the historians, Jurgen, which is a friend of ours who's not with us, who would really love to, but he's out of Germany.
he's still alive.
He's
so-
still alive. I didn't
Phrasing-
mean that.
phrasing.
He's still here, but he's in another country. He tried to get here. But I was told that this original photo here, I'm sorry the podcasters can't see that one. They actually had cardboard spray painted black behind the grills so you couldn't see the engine, because at the time during that photograph I was told there was no engine in it.
oh, wow. I
So
also,
a little bit of Hollywood on.
yeah, I want to call out the wheels. The wheels are just gorgeous on this car, aren't they?
They are.
I mean, a 3-spoke design. I don't know do you know who? I mean, they're just gorgeous.
I do. It's written down at home, and I'm so embarrassed because there was a gentleman named Brian that I dealt with at the company, and I could remember his name. He was very kind, but I can't think of the name.
That's
of the
okay.
wheels.
All right. We're going to keep moving here. Another great shot. This is a letter from the president, D. Peter Rose, Vector Automotive
Peter
Corporation.
Rose.
Sorry. I'll keep flipping through here. Some nice glamour shots of the engine bay. I mean, that thing looks beautiful and nice and clean. Interior shot, which this is interesting. Take a mental picture of this, because in a second, I think you'll see this exact car without the interior in it. I think it's
Is that your
the
factory
And that's
shot?
the first
Yeah.
generation of M12. There's actually 2 generations of M12.
my head already hurts. Why are you giving me more information?
I told you there's a lot to it.
There's a lot to it. If
All
you
right,
look
go
at the
ahead.
dash, there was relay buttons that you can push on there. On the second generation, it didn't. For someone with a little bit upper development that's trying to get into the car, the second series, the doors open up about 6 inches further than the
Right.
first generation, which is phenomenal for me. And there was some few other different cues that changed on the first. Oh, the first generation also had roll up and roll down windows that are 4 inches.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
a
it was a lot of
supercar.
weight, a lot of.
So you
goofiness.
could fit a Whopper through there,
You-
but you could not fit the
I
milkshake.
joked about that. You can stretch your hand all the way out the window, and all you can do is wave to somebody.
If
If
you,
you
if
try
you
to
do
pull that
bun,
through,
cheese, meat, bun, you're all right.
yeah, build it
Okay.
yourself.
All right.
And the second generation, they just said, hey, there's no need for that. The cockpit is sealed, but the air works great. The ventilation system works good. So it's-
All right. Well, let's continue moving on here. I also want to call out in this picture the exhaust pipes. Pretty unique and different, right? I haven't seen those on any other car.
a lot of weight on the end of the tips, and if you look at some of the newer ones, they've been modified and changed out because of how heavy the tips were.
Really?
Yeah, at the very ends.
That's interesting. Okay. All right. Continuing, just another nice shot. 1995 year in review. I'm going to call this out because we know this company failed shortly after these pictures were taken.
5 years.
This is what happened in 1995. A new Vector team was established. The exciting M12 exotic supercar was launched into production. Manufacturing assembly facilities were commissioned. A national network of premium dealerships was identified and qualified. That doesn't mean they actually happened, right? That means, we want them there. They qualify.
It was almost a Tucker thing. So
Well,
we'll
it's like, I don't even know if they called the dealerships up or not.
buy
I
the
don't know.
radio and
Yeah. An aggressive sales and marketing strategy was developed. It wasn't necessarily implemented. The first two production M12s were built for the official launch in Detroit at the North American International Auto Show in early 1996. I think I have pictures of those here in a second. So you tell me. You guys are the experts.
We have.
All right, here's my crown and glory. This is my one share of Vector stock.
Ooh.
beautiful.
I bought this. Yes, my full name is John Gregory Stanley. I paid $350 for this
Bless your heart.
Wow.
in
So
1995.
that's original stock you got when they were
Original. Well,
still
this
in
is
business. I
yeah.
mean, that was back in the day. That's not something you got on eBay. Or
No, this is it. This is
That's-
it.
Yeah.
I was so in love with this company and the fact that they were near my hometown of Jacksonville, Florida, down in Green Cove Springs. I got with my mom. I said, "How do I buy a share of stock?" you know, and here it is. You see, I don't know. That's not a cigarette burn on there. I don't know what happened with that, but it's worth nothing as stock. Hopefully, it's probably worth something as automobilia. I need to frame
It's
it because it's been in a folder for 20 years. All right, here's take a look at this is from the Times Union, Jacksonville, Florida, Friday, January 5th, 1996. Vector Lamborghini hits at Auto Show, dazzling them in Detroit. So these are the two cars here. You'll see it in a second. Vector plans to build 96 M12s this year. That did not obviously happen.
The fish was this big at the time.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
You know, it's funny you say that because the very last paragraph here talks about Lamborghini. Plans for 1996 call for 24 VT Roadster Diablos and 12 rear drive Diablo coupes at $222,000 each. So it's pretty interesting that they were projecting, you know, Vector production to be more than double what Lamborghini, which has been in business, you know, for 40 years at this time or whatever.
And that's about the time they were going from Lamborghini in Italy was going from the hand-built cars to production line.
Yep.
build.
What's amazing is the price and the year, because in 1999, just a few years later, $345,000 was what a VT Roadster was worth in the United States.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. All right, here's the money shot. So this is, look at that Vector sign, and our friend
And I like
who is
car
not in the room,
back.
who is not in the room with us right now, has the red, white, and blue Statue of Liberty Vector. It is a thing of beauty. It's hand painted. It's unbelievable.
That flag car is so awesome. That's,
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry, you already know that's my favorite M12.
I know.
I mean, you see that flag, and
I know.
Plus, and now, so the flag car is the #1 production car. Is that?
That is 001 to the public.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay. All right, we'll get into the pictures here because I get confused with all this stuff. All
And
right,
that's #2, yellow one.
it
right in
is
front of
yellow. I
Yes.
couldn't obviously tell in this picture. So,
I'm familiar with the stage and the setup and
Okay.
roughly the time.
do you have the sign from this show?
I don't have that sign. No, I have the newer sign.
The newer sign. Okay. All right. Let's pop to the next one here. All right, here comes the pictures I took.
That was the gold one.
The horrendous pictures I took. So,
They did a lot of testing in that car.
is that the brochure car? Or is it
That's
not?
the brochure car.
Yeah.
That's the pre-production.
That's a pretty color. 'cause
That's
you
the
don't see cars.
PP1 or 2. I want to. I once again we'd have to call Jurgen. That's
Yeah, I
my
know.
lifeline.
I could call him up.
And
So-
oh,
ahead.
then we'd be on this podcast for I love him to
know.
death. But
Oh, you're
days.
breaking up.
So, go ahead, Dave.
oh no, that's it.
Okay. So there's four people in this picture. The tall guy that we see the best of with kind of the red hair, that's my Uncle Jack. So I know who that guy is.
Okay.
He went with me, and he's a Corvette guy. He has a '67 Corvette I've been drooling over since 1978.
Mid-year.
You still have
Love
it?
Oh yeah, yeah. He has a '63 Impala 409.
And you send him Christmas cards every year, right?
Well, yeah, he's got a '63 Impala 409 with special anniversary gold paint job that was optioned to commemorate the millionth Chevy off the line. So rare paint code is actually a '62 color. His is a '63.
Is he in Cincy?
No, he's down in Florida in Jacksonville.
Okay, that's
And
worth the drive.
he's owned it since 1966.
Wow.
And he brought my cousin home in that car, and so he'll never sell it to me. But it's still cool. It's in mint shape. He just did a total restoration. Anyways, that's my Uncle Jack.
Love Uncle Jack.
I'd love to find out who
Hi,
the
Uncle.
guy is on the right. So the guy on the right is the reason I got in there. He was my best friend's girlfriend's dad, and he did like production. He was in charge of the production line for the M12s.
He worked it.
He worked for Vector.
Okay.
I don't know who he is. I remember my best friend's name because we're still best friends.
Good.
I don't remember his girlfriend's name, and honestly, he doesn't remember either because I tried to research it so I could figure it out. So if anybody can tell me who that guy is,
We're still rounding up. We got a pretty good list of the M12 employees in Florida and the W8 employees
Okay.
in California.
I love to thank him for because I'm still drooling
Thanks
over
to the
these
Vector
photos.
website. Who set the Vector website up?
Which one? There's a few.
Oh, well, anyway,
Be
thanks
more
to Vector
specific.
websites and car owners where the people, they'll come up and say, hey, I did the interior in that car.
Oh, that's
Really?
cool. All right, well then I got
Yeah.
probably pictures of him here.
Actually,
'cause-
if you a good website, a good YouTube channel for anything Vector is called Vector Files
Vector Files.
Okay.
on YouTube, and that's our buddy,
Okay.
over in Europe, and shoot me a picture. I'm sure he can find out who that is.
I'll put this all these links in the description. So, all right, let's move on. I got like 20 pictures here.
Okay.
All right. So they moved the gold car inside. So that is it on the left because I was able to watch it go in. Not quite sure what's going on with the car on the right. I don't know. Would that be the red, white, and blue car? Maybe?
That car there looks like it was the test car, PP1 or PP2.
Is that
Okay.
Is that a black primer that's on it? Or?
I think it's just the black fiberglass.
When they did the crash
Ah.
test, all the crash test papers and stuff I have aren't in color. They're all the DOT book, everything I have is all black, and it just showed like the
Oh,
black
so you can
and
tell
white
colors. Yeah.
hitting the wall. And
So it's funny. I just noticed in this picture, my uncle has a beard, and I can't remember him ever having a beard. So that's kind of freaking me out. All right.
he had cool
He,
cars,
didn't-
just
he
no
didn't take you
razor.
down there in the ice cream van, did he?
No.
Okay.
No. So is that car still? Does it still exist?
In pieces.
Oh, in pieces.
Yeah,
Okay.
I actually have the frame out of that car.
Oh, nice.
Well, let's resurrect it. Let's put these funky brake lights on it and
Love
Get
it.
with it, Dave.
let's
What are
show
you
it.
waiting for?
Let's show it.
Love it.
All right, another shot. Just taking a little scan to the left here. We can see 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 cars, shells of 4 cars,
yeah.
possibly. If we squint hard enough.
Yeah.
So this is the separate factory from the Lamborghini dealership and shop, correct?
Yeah, this is in
This is
Green Cove.
Somewhere down
That,
down the
it's
street.
it's the building awkward or
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is in
okay.
Green Cove Springs. And I apologize because the pictures are only going to get worse.
No, they're great.
I love it.
I love this
It's-
picture. People hanging out. They're working on whatever number this is. I have no idea.
I like the fact that somebody spun the rotor and it's still spinning in that picture.
Let's see. Any call outs on this particular shot? Recognize any faces?
No, Jim owes me $20.
Another shot, just some stuff in primer, looks like.
I have a lot of the racks bought from a friend out in Florida that ended up with a bunch of the tooling in the racks, and I have quite a few of that.
So you are a dedicated car enthusiast if you're buying the rack of the car. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of nuts.
Well,
okay.
if you got the parts, you got extra doors hanging around, you got to have the correct display racks for it to hold them.
Sure.
I mean, come on.
All right. Pictures are starting to get worse. So here's the call out. So look inside the dash here. You can see they have like PVC pipes to keep the carpet from coming out. You can see they got some test stuff. I mean, what I like is you can barely see in the upper left. That's a temporary tachometer up there, I guess, to test the engine and stuff like that. So is your thought that this is probably the brochure car?
That is the brochure car.
Okay. This is the brochure.
There's only
car.
one that's that color, correct?
Yes, there was only one that color.
Oh, well, that made it easier than I thought it would be. All right. I thought this was a cool shot, just
That's a very cool
Nice.
shot.
right. A couple of the
Looks like-
seats.
Couple
Yeah,
of
it
the
looks
seats,
like
the
it's
foam.
something Gumby or somebody hugging the seats.
Yeah.
you know?
right. And then here's a better shot of the interior for the show car. Handily, they have the fire extinguisher right there, ready to go.
Yep, of course.
Well,
that's
that's required, as a judge at the concourse here for the Corvettes, the fire extinguisher is required, or that's 3 points off.
Now, time out. Look, there's another painted Vector back there.
the silver
The
one.
silver one, yeah.
Oh, all right. Somehow I didn't get that car in any of the other pictures.
Yeah, we're kind of weird like that. We can,
Well, that's why you're here. That's why I scanned all
it's like those magic eye pictures. We can pick stuff out
All right.
like really
That's Bob
quick,
Shue, who still owes me that money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
so you're
Before
making
we go any farther, I just want to say, Greg, thank you very much, because this is still automotive history. And without people like you, without you taking these photos, I mean, this stuff is lost. I mean,
Yeah,
it
Absolutely. I
and
mean,
when-
he's a fan as much as us. He was at the factory back
Yeah.
then taking pictures.
Well, it's nice because I finally have an outlet for all this geekiness,
yeah,
right?
trust
love
me.
it.
Yeah.
Actually,
But
You're not alone.
My girl asked me, what I make a month, and I said, I usually bring home about 4 or 5 figures a month, and she doesn't know they're Star Wars figures. But
so what's so funny? Yeah, right. What's so funny is I met Dave because of these pictures. I made
well, we're friends because the pictures I have of Dave too.
so the way yeah.
Hey.
So the way we
We
met
have a
was
contract on that.
I have a big car buddy. His name's Opie. He does a cars and coffee outside of Cincinnati, and I'm like, I got all these Vector pictures. Do you know anybody that would appreciate these?
Opie's
Oh, yeah.
great, too.
Yeah, and
yeah.
he said, there's 2 Vectors in Cincinnati. I'm like, I had no idea. And so he set up the tour where I met you. So we went to our buddy's place first. We looked at the red, white, and blue Statue of Liberty car, and then we grabbed him and we went to your place and took a tour of your place and saw your car. So the whole reason we met is because I was this big car nerd in 1996 or 5 or whatever it was.
All through Ellis. Love Ellis.
Right.
you
Yeah.
know the saying, us loners have to stick together. So
All right, here's another shot from the other side. I thought this was pretty cool just because you can see, everything's not quite together yet. I'm not quite sure on the upper right above the glove box door what all those little buttons are for. And
Those are switches.
well, I know they're switches, but they're duct
It's a
tapes up
switch, not a button.
there,
Proper nomenclature.
Headlights, the whole 9 yards to mock up.
Okay, all right. Now we're getting worse and worse pictures here. So there's the back end of one. I remember on the tour they told us that the Diablo engine cost $37,000 is what they had to pay for these engines. So not a great
I have
shot.
a story about that too regarding the Lamborghini engines for the M12s and the W8, but we'll get to that.
You want to say that now?
Dave already knows this.
Yeah.
Well, tell us now. We're looking at two pictures of it. Here's the other engine.
It's part. So when, as I was saying, when Megatech bought Vector and Lamborghini, and they were moving everything to Florida, and they took a bunch of stuff. Well, supposedly the number 17 car, right? 17.
Mm-hmm.
So the number 7, because 18 is the last one, the green one, right? So the number 17 black W8 went over with it. So Megatech has a Vector and Lamborghini in Florida. So they're like, oh, we own both companies, blah, blah, blah. So the story that I've heard from different people, 99%
Right.
verified, 99% verified, is somehow they said, well, they owed the Lamborghini factory some money for some engines that they got. So they used the Vector W8 as exchange and payment.
Oh, okay.
And so they sent the Vector to Italy, to Lamborghini, in payment for some of these Lamborghini motors.
Okay.
So somehow this car is there in Italy, and it ends up, of course, Chrysler or Audi buys them, and the Vector W8 ends up at Audi in Germany, and then it gets a kind of a, not an underground deal, but they sell the car, and it ends up at a museum in Germany. And so all of a sudden it shows up with the registration, and it's a brand new, almost no miles Vector W8 from California with Kentucky pink slip.
Oh,
Inbred
Yeah.
Kentucky or somewhere with like 2,000 people. So we and our buddy of Vector Files, in Europe.
By the way, I love the great state of Kentucky.
And you stop me anytime you hear. You stop me anytime you hear something wrong. Okay, I'm
Kentucky's going to be like, we hate Vectors.
Yeah. and so now this car is on display in a museum in Germany with the title from Kentucky, and so we don't know how it went from California to a Kentucky title when it was in Florida,
right.
and then Italy, and then Germany, blah blah blah. So there's a lot of just one of the many controversies there with that car and the history of that. Well, as I'm talking to people, and there's a local guy who was on the board, a guy named Bob Brainer. So Jerry Weigert, two things you could never say around Jerry Weigert. You could never say, and it doesn't matter what you're saying or what you're talking about, you could never say the words kit car.
Right.
Yeah.
I can see that.
He would just,
Agreed.
he was triggered, right?
Most of us are.
Yeah.
Could never say kit car. And I'd actually worked at McBurney doing the McBurney Daytonas for a while and did some movie cars and stuff. So you could never say kit car. The other thing you could never say was B. Brainer. He was on the board. He's kind of the guy that orchestrated whatever the hostile takeover,
Sure,
quote,
right.
quote unquote.
Yep.
So of course, obviously, Jerry wasn't a fan. So as I'm making my interviews and phone calls and stuff about 2 years ago, I'm talking to Bob for a while, and we get along. I talk to everybody. It's give everybody a chance.
Bob was a kick-ass guy anyway.
Yeah, he worked at different car companies. He was ahead of he knew car stuff.
Yeah. Right.
And better businessman than Jerry.
Right.
But as I'm talking to him, and we're talking for a while on the phone, and before we hang up, and I was telling him a story, and I think I was telling him about going to Jacksonville and filming down there, doing a film for like a month. I was down there, loved the place,
Right.
And so he says, since you told me a personal story, whatever, I'll tell you a personal story, right? I said, okay, because he was trying to do like a feature film about Vector, kind of based from his perspective, and so, but he's telling me, he says, yeah, blah blah blah. He says, I grew up on a tobacco farm in Kentucky, and I was like, and it took me a minute to think.
Wow.
I
Kentucky
thought,
connection.
yeah, and I'm like, and so it's like he answered a question without me even asking.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, you realize what, that's just one of those freak things that
Yeah.
and I was like, that's there's got to be a connection there, because why would you have a Vector,
Right.
America's first supercar,
Yeah.
with the title from Kentucky that went from California to Florida.
Right.
you know?
Right. I think you solved the mystery. Yeah. Okay. All right, we got a couple more pictures, horrible pictures here. So this is just another shot from
Your
the
whole
rear
picture
end.
You know
is
what?
Great.
You can
Actually,
zoom
that
it-
one's upside down. The one on the right. No. Yeah.
No, maybe the car's upside down.
Yeah. The one on the
No,
end. So.
not at all. That's the back of the transaxle, and that's after the transaxle was installed. That's before it is installed.
Yep.
Those mounts were made for Lamborghini mounts, which were made to swap out so you can do different engine swaps because they had different ideas of what they wanted to do with it. And the actual basis of the WX3 and the M12 was going to have the Faulkner V12 in it instead of a Lamborghini engine. But one of the stories that I acquired,
Real quick before you do the story, I just
Yes.
have to point out the fact that we're talking about engine mounts in a car. They only made a handful of them. Tells you we're going pretty deep, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
We are
I just had to make that
we are
observation.
geeking out, and we are in our safe space with the three of us here. I mean, we are in a good place, and there is a so if you that's still an interesting part. Like I said, like we can go forever, but Falconer, if you're familiar with Falconer,
Falconer.
who built the American V12, was basically like a V8
Okay.
with more cylinders. They had started out in Salinas in California, and right as Megatech was taking over the Vector stuff, they had sent people up to part of my personal Vector geek collection is I've got original tapes and I've got original videotape of one of the guys from Vector going up to from Los Angeles up to Salinas to the Falconer factory where they build these high performance race car engines, and they had a it was a full size Chevy Suburban before they became the Tahoe, a full size Chevy Suburban 4-door with the Falconer V12 in it with 820 horsepower or something like that. But I've got film of the Falconer V12 on the dyno, headers glowing, just screen.
Oh, wow.
It's awesome.
That would be cool, yeah.
And then they put it in this Tahoe, was the test bed, and that was the car. And I've got a couple of pictures of the V12 Falconer, which is a full size like Chevy V8, V8 with extra cylinders in the back frame of a Vector. So that was before they did the Lamborghini V12. They were going to do the Falconer V12. So.
Right. We do have a few more slides here. If we might be able to get to, we'll see. So, Dave, tell us your story.
Oh, the story that I heard that the Indonesian group that ended up with it, there is an M12 that went to Italy, so they can do the fitment and everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, they took
And
the M12 so
where-
they could fit the engine
Where
in
that car or chassis went, which wasn't a finished car, no one knows. That probably just got scrapped and departed. And they had the sorry about that, got distracted. Anyway, so they took the motors, and donated. The Indonesian group that took over from Chrysler, the Lamborghini division, rumor had it that a lot of shareholders were upset and scared because here's Chrysler,
Right, coming in.
and then now it's
Yeah.
an Indonesian group. So what they did was they bought the motors for the Vectors to help pick up sales.
Okay. Yep.
And that was one of the rumors to help say, hey, look, no, Lamborghini's doing better now without Chrysler.
Right.
So that's one of the stories that I heard that's why Lamborghini engines ended up in Vectors.
Okay. That's an interesting story. All right, we're going to get back to some of these pictures here. This one's kind of fun. Looks like it's basically mapping out the wiring harness. We got a.
That was the brand new Vector that was coming out.
All right, tell us, how do you know that?
Yeah, I know.
Look at it. No, it's just
Looks exactly like a Vector. What are you talking about?
It's got no body panels. It's got a
Yeah.
steering wheel, headlights.
This
and
was the
wires.
stealth version of the Street
that
Fighter.
was doing the wiring harness for the M12.
Okay.
That was actually how they were doing the wiring harness to make it, to try to simplify it, to plug it through the chassis, and that's what they used as their mock-up for
Yeah,
the wiring
that's brilliant.
harness.
It's cool. All right, now this is one of the worst pictures, but it is the test car you said.
The test car.
Different shot of that. It's extremely blurry.
I'm sure it was moving really fast. Not your fault.
No, I was probably tripping over something. Another horrible picture here. I don't know. I love the back slats on these cars. I got a picture where you can see the Lamborghini engine.
Well, it's great not only to see the engine, but it allows all that heat from the mid-engine to escape, and that is a blessing.
Yeah.
In any supercar to extract heat, that is,
Yeah.
And
the whole reason I took the picture on the left is because I could see Lamborghini script on it.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
I love louvers. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If it's a Mustang, Mach 1, whatever. I mean,
Absolutely.
hood louvers,
Yeah,
anything.
the Mach 1 spoiler slats. All right, so I did get a picture of the silver car here. someone working on something. So I just tried to grab all the shots I could as
Interior,
I was going
that's
through.
the console.
Oh yeah, console on the ground there. Sure. All right, just a few more to go. Oh, this is the last one. I had to put this last shot up because it shows the M12 show car, and on the bottom it says American Dream. I thought that was brilliant. So
It was.
that's it for our slideshow. Is there anything else you kind of wanted to cover about M12s? Well, not too deep. I think once we're talking about engine mounting bolts, I think we've
I
gone
know.
deep enough.
How many threads are on the lug nut?
Right. So Dave,
Actually on the M12s, they're studs.
Uh,
They don't have they actually have the studded ones.
I got
Oh, wow.
I got to reel these guys in here. All right, so Dave, any last comments? Oh, wait, I got a question.
Yes.
So we talked about the W8, the M12. Will there be another generation of Vectors coming back?
So you haven't seen the WX8 from 1999?
Okay, let's talk about in the future. Anything
There you go.
today beyond? Will we ever have another Vector on the road? New
That's
one.
up to the
I was-
attorneys.
I was
That's
going to
up
say
to the
it's
gods.
kind of confidential, as Jerry would say right now. So I mean, we've got a grade on our Facebook page. We've got a Vector group. We've got a really talented younger Italian kid who's worked for Toyota and all these big companies. And in his spare time, he's doing vector designs, new vector designs, and computer graphics that are just.
Is there love
amazing.
for the Vector? Would everybody love to see another one come out? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But in
okay.
my field, in my thoughts, and the next car, and if anything with me and my attorneys have to do with it, it will be a race car. The street car will not come out yet. I think that some stuff was thought of backwards, and I think the Vector name should have been out on the race course, like a Saleen.
Yeah.
Right.
But let's get that name Ferrari. Let's get that name Vector
Right.
out
Established.
there.
Win on Sunday, sell on Monday.
There you go. And and not only that, but a race car, I don't want to say is less money than a street car, but it kind of is. You don't have
Yeah.
to worry about the bells and whistles, the AC. You don't have to worry about DOT testing.
Right, yeah.
You don't have to worry about all the crash testing and airbags and all this extra lighter weight. When it comes to a race car, and let's face it, it should be fun. And in this day and age with the electric stuff coming out, it's kind of scary for the, what the future holds for all of our
And there
race
are
cars.
there are more and more companies that are building track day cars.
Oh, yeah.
Weekend cars, just like buying a dirt bike or something. Yeah, you're not going to ride it to work, but you're going to have fun on the weekend.
So just,
Factory 5, I think, is one of them, and Noble, and just really a lot of great
Arrow and
companies.
a lot of these other guys.
so if you had to base it, not necessarily on a current car, but if you had to base it on a current powertrain that's in production,
I've got the design already in my
What would
head,
you
and I've
base
talked
it
to
on?
some people. So
Ameri-
here's
American
going
V8?
some,
Right now, what I am actually doing, because I have the actual chassis number 16 and body, actually, thanks to my friend right here, I have a 555 cubic inch all aluminum engine that will be fuel injected, naturally aspirated. We're trying to push 1,100 horsepower out of a big block. It's hard, and yes, it's a big block Chevrolet, but I'm still trying to have the covers that are fabbed Vector, trying to do that powered by Ford type.
Yeah.
When you pop the hood of an old Mustang and you see powered by Ford,
Yeah.
it's impressive. You get chills, and I'd like to see that as well. Something interesting. And what I'm doing personally with that is the 555 all aluminum, still a manual transmission, ZF transaxle, so you can still go out and have fun, hear that noise, feel that torque. And hopefully we can keep the sound down. I adore Lotuses and Lolas,
Yeah,
and
but that big-
T70 with a big block in it just rumbles the earth, and I kind of like that. But at the same time, you still have to have some type of nice sound deadener and keep stuff.
That's part of the
quiet.
sensory that, like I said,
But there will be a 555 in this Vector that's coming. The last of the M12s. It's actually named the M16 because it was the 16-inch chassis, and we'll see how that comes out. But that is a test right now for some other vehicles.
well, let's do this. I
I-
appreciate y'all being on the podcast. I need to wrap it up, but
Thank you.
let's plan on.
Can I give a quick
Oh, yeah.
outline? Just because I want to get some feedback. This
Sure.
is my stuff I've been thinking about seriously for a while. I worked at a Chevrolet dealer when I was 20, and that's from there. So in a perfect world, if I had lots of money, like Dave, then I would be doing the new, the initial idea, like he's saying about doing the Ford engine in it. Vector was supposed to be all-American. It's America's first supercar. It was, something you could take to a dealership and they could work on it. It
Right.
wasn't some super exotic, whatever. So you got to have American power, right? So however you design the body and chassis for the next generation, I'm thinking, not kit car, but all custom built. But in a perfect world, get a true 1,200 horsepower. It would be the new Corvette engine drivetrain, the mid-engine, which they got like the 800 horsepower option. You put a supercharger on it. That's an easy 1,200 horsepower, which is what they originally advertised. Any Chevy dealer can work on it.
Right.
You know.
Yep.
And put all the new, like I said, the Vectra was so far ahead of its time, 30, 40 years ago with the GPS and with the electronic dash and all the other things that are now pretty common in cars. They were ahead of their time.
Right.
And just make all that stuff that they imagined in 1980 a reality.
Well, the aerospace technology definitely was a huge selling point, and I love and adore that.
Yeah.
And you've heard out of my lips mostly race, lighter weight, and not so much that. But you know what? That is aerospace technology.
Yeah.
That is lighter composites. That is lighter alloys. That is different type of things. Right now, a jet fighter can do so many incredible things that is unreal that it's hard to catch up with the technology like that. So the rumble of a 62 Ferrari GTO, feeling it under the buddy, under your pants when you're shifting gears, and the hair that's sticking up on your arms when you're taking that tachometer up, as well as technology, aerospace technology, to keep Jerry's dream going with the aerospace technology is very important to the future of whoever does anything with Vector. If it's American Automotive Corporation or if it's somebody else, it needs to keep Jerry's dream alive with that.
That's great. All right, that's a great way to end it. Let's make a deal here. Let's meet again when either we have the M16 out,
Yes.
or when we have the movie out,
Oh,
or when we
definitely.
have the new Vector out. Any one of those
Well,
three,
same
or all
time.
three.
Yeah, I'll definitely keep you the updates on the Vector America's First Supercar documentary coming out next year. So,
Awesome.
Which is phenomenal. And if you can see
he's seen
a
some
little
clips
pitch,
of it online. There's
if you
some
can
clips
see his
online.
James Dean one too, throw that out there too. It's great.
Okay.
Trust me.
And there's actually some connections between James Dean and Vector, which is
All right, we'll leave it at that.
yeah.
Yes.
All right.
That's all I'm going to say. Yeah.
Thanks all for joining me.
Bless
on the
your heart.
Collector
Thanks
Thank you
for
very much
listening.
for having us. It was great. It's
Thank you.
fun. I hope you enjoyed the concourse. It's the first time here at Wynn, and
Oh, it's fantastic.
yeah, so-
it was great.
By the way, beautiful hotel. The staff phenomenal.
Yeah.
Come here and see the magic. The Wynn Hotel is.
I
phenomenal.
love this place.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for the use of the studio and the time and helping us out, everybody, because it's been a really fun, interesting weekend, and you can tell by how many fans of the Vector were out this weekend
Yeah,
that
that's true.
it's still a popular car.
Cool. Thanks,
God
guys. I
bless.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg.